I'll show you my implementation. First off, I'm using date.now, and I'm storing it to date submitted in this object literal. This is what becomes our note. By the way, in case you're interested, that number is the number of milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. Fun fact. Well, anyway, this is simple enough. I'm just storing our current time into the date submitted property. Now I've also added something down here in the view. Down here in the view, I've added a little piece of functionality to the render function. When render is called, the date gets put into the HTML string. Now a little note about this thing here, I'm actually making a new date with that number, and then I'm converting it to a string. That ends up looking something like this. Now it's not the most beautiful, readable date, but you can go in and use some of the date methods to make it better if you'd like. But the coolest thing is, if you look back, the amount of code hasn't really changed much at all. We just have this one new line in the view, and this one new line here where we create our notes. Now, one quick side note about this being in the octopus. Strictly speaking, you could make the argument that this is kind of data-ish. Maybe it should be in the model. And that's a totally legitimate argument. In fact, a lot of organizational paradigms and frameworks put this kind of a thing in the model itself. Now, for simplicity in this particular example, I'm not doing that. I'm just creating an object literal right here. But later on in the course, you'll see some of the interesting and slightly more complicated ways that people form models.